So we have a bunch of ham radio satellites. Now, to be able to do this, you got to understand how satellites work and why something orbits the Earth as opposed to crashing to the ground or going off into space. So I got to go into teaching you some physics. Physics dictates the parameters to put an object in orbit. Orbit is achieved when the centripetal force equals the gravitational force. So centripetal force is when you go around a curve too fast, you get thrown out of the car. Or if you do it this time of year, the car slides off the road because there's a force that pulls you off to the side, right? And that force is basically based on your velocity. It's velocity squared over the radius of the turn. Okay, so as something is orbiting the Earth, how fast it's going is important, right? That pushes that satellite away from the Earth and how far away it is. So you have those two things. And then you have to talk about gravitational force. Now, gravitational force is pretty damn important because otherwise, if we didn't have it, we'd be flying off into space. And that wouldn't be too cool. Gravitational force is basically the mass of the Earth and your mass, which is not really that important, but it's divided by the radius squared. The radius is how far you are from the center of the Earth. So it's this game of if you're further away from Earth, the gravitational force won't be as much. If you're close to the Earth, the centripetal force will be pretty bad. So that's what it looks like. You got the centripetal force pulling you out. You got the gravitational force pulling you in. And when those are equal, you're in orbit. If the gravitational force is heavier, you crash into the Earth, as satellites have a nasty habit of doing, right? And stuff starts falling on your house. If the centripetal force is higher, you fly off into space. So the lower the satellite is, it has to move faster. So a satellite which moves at the Earth speed is called geostationary. It moves at the same speed of Earth. The Earth moves at 1,037 miles per hour. So you right there in the front row, you're moving at 1,037 miles per hour. You didn't know it, right? You figured the wind would mess up your hair or whatever. Well, we're all moving at that speed, including the atmosphere and everything else, right? So the satellite has to move at that same speed, and the height above the Earth for it to do that is 22,236 miles above the Earth. That's great, except just like trying to find a parking space in Midtown Manhattan, you can't find a place to put a satellite up there. It's pretty darn crowded. So hams don't get to play up in that area. We get to play in the low Earth orbiting area. So, and again, also, if you're up at 22,000 miles, you can only see about 4,800 mile radius. You can only see one side of the Earth. You're not going to see the other side. You're stuck there. So they have multiple satellites that cover different parts of the Earth. So low Earth orbiting, LEO. Okay, ham satellites are not geostationary. And that means you have to track the satellite. It moves. How fast does it move? Well, if you get a tracking program, you can actually see the satellite right after sunset, if it's clear out, which that's asking a lot around here. You actually see it streaking across the sky, and it's like, wow, look at that thing move. Well, low Earth orbiting satellites move at about 14,000 miles per hour, 1,600 miles per hour. They move pretty darn fast. And the passes only last 10 to 15 minutes. So when you get on there, you want to kind of know what you want to be saying. You know, you want to get right to the point there, because when that satellite goes on the other side of the Earth, you're all done. And typically, you're only going to get 4 passes per day at a particular location. AOS is acquisition of the signal. That's when the satellite can first be heard. It's going to come up over the air. It's going to, it's below the horizon. You can't hear it. I don't care how big your antenna is. You can't hear it when it gets significantly below the horizon, right? It comes up, and in that direction, at that elevation, 0 elevation. And then when it goes over and comes back the other way, it's called LOS, the loss of signal. And that's your window you have to talk. So a high pass is when the satellite is almost overhead, 70 to 90 degrees straight overhead. Okay, that's like the gold standard. A low pass is a satellite that may only reach up 10 degrees. It comes up over there and it just skirts the surface and then goes out over there. You can work those satellites, but you're going to need a fairly big antenna because the signal, the satellite's further away, the signals are weaker, doesn't work as good. How far can you go? Well, it depends on the height of the satellite. The higher satellites, they're at different altitudes, right? Will allow further contacts than lower satellites. So if we look at the RS-44 satellite, it's up 750 miles. Actually, at the closest, it's between 750 and 900. It can see 2,500 miles. So that means that it'll see you 2,500 miles, and the guy on the other side can be 2,500 miles. That's about 5,000 miles. I've worked Europe on that satellite. I've worked Alaska on that satellite. I don't work Alaska much on 20 meters. I worked on the satellite though, right? So it works really well. The ISS, which is the International Space Station, that's only up 200 miles. That can only see about 1,400 miles or about 2,800 miles total. That's good for working local guys. So, of course, the geostationary satellites, you can go much further, but that is not open to us. We don't get to play there. So you need to run a tracking program to determine the passes. You need to know when the satellite's going to be within range. You need to know what direction it's going to be coming at, how high it's going to be. It'll run on an available computer. I run a DOS program, right? It'll run on anything. That program will run on a wet sponge. You can also go to amsat.org and just type in where you're located, and it'll tell you where the satellite is you want to know. So how do you track a satellite? The program requires something called Keplerian elements. It's named after Hans Kepler. It's a bunch of parameters that will exactly determine where the satellite is. So you talk about the epoch, which is the time that they take the snapshot. And then the orbital inclination, that is the tilt at the equator. So the satellite doesn't go straight north-south. It kind of goes at a tilt like that, right? The right ascension and node, where the orbit shoots from the equator. The argument of perigee, the angle of the orbit. The eccentricity, the shape of the orbit. Is it totally spherical, totally circle, or is it kind of do this elliptical business? The mean motion, the height of the orbit, the mean anomaly, the angle, and the drag. So you put those 8 things into a program. The program will say, it's here, it's going to be at this time, and it's going to go over there. I mean, and it's that exact. So this is what Keplerian elements look like. You can download this from amsat.org. It's basically put up there all the time. And all those things I just mentioned, that's what all those numbers are. The program will read that and say, okay, yeah, I'll tell you where the satellite is, not a problem. So you can see like right here on the top, it has the name of the satellite. There's ISS. And that first number is the epoch, where it is. And those are all the numbers. And then SO50, AO73, AO91. You don't have to read that stuff. I mean, the program does. But if you ever see that, that's what it means. Now, here's a problem. Satellite orbits often change with time due to orbit decay. Okay, so various elements like atmospheric drag can cause this. And without rocket control, the satellite will eventually re-enter the Earth and burn up. And you better hope it burns up, because if it doesn't burn up, it's going to plop somebody on the head. Right? They usually do burn up. The really expensive ones, they have a rocket on there and they can kind of push it back to wherever it needs to be, but they do drag. And it also means that the Keplerian elements will also change. And I learned that the hard way. So I do this for field day. That's why I got involved with satellites. I can get on 20 meters, work anyone I want. I got a satellite, got a point and antenna, but they give you 100 points for field day for working a satellite. I'll sell my own mother out to create 100 points at field day, right? I mean, I'm going to do this, So I did. So I set the thing up for June for field day, and then I went to use the thing in December, and I found like ISS was like way off. It dragged. It's a low satellite, and it changed. I had to reload the elements. So you have to kind of do that every so often. And that what I showed you was the 2-line format from the ARRL, that you just put that into the program. So the output of a tracking program, it'll show you the time, and at every time it's going to show you the azimuth. The azimuth is the direction this way. I point north, east, south, west, whatever. And then the elevation. So 0 degrees, it's dead horizontal. Straight up is 90 degrees, and it's usually some number between those two. So the program presents these parameters every minute. So every minute you could sit there and adjust it. So I had like a Yagi in my driveway, and I'd see the thing and I'd go out and turn it, and then go and do a couple of CQs and run out and turn it a little more and do a couple of, not the most desirable way to do a satellite pass, but that's what I had. Since then, I've gotten smart. I actually use a rotor now. So it'll tell you where to set the satellite for azimuth and for elevation. The programs can either be a list, or it can actually be actually show on a map of the globe where the satellite is. This is what a tracking program will show. This was done this summer. So the first line, it shows Sunday, 17 August 25, 1947. Now here's the problem. That's UTC. You better do the conversion right, or it ain't going to work. And UTC in the summer is 4 hours difference. Right now it's 5 hours. Next week it will change. So you got to be on top of this crap, or you're going to mess it up. So there's the time, there's the elevation. So the pass always starts at an elevation of 0. And notice how we go up in elevation, 7, 16, 28. This is a high pass. It's hit 72 degrees. That's like almost like that, right? And then eventually comes down to 0 again. And then the azimuth, this satellite comes up from the south. And it goes to the southwest, and then the west, and then it ends up going a little past north. That's important because that'll tell you who you're going to be working. So it's a western pass, so you're going to be working a lot of people in the United States. A lot of the afternoon passes are out over the ocean to the east. Not too many people on there. You know, I sit there, call CQ for the entire pass, and I don't get a peep. I'm in the satellite, I can hear myself coming back, but there's just nobody there. Okay, and then you got the phase, you got the latitude and longitude. So the lat long, you can plot it on a map, and the range will tell you in kilometers how far it is, and the orbit number. I like tracking the orbit number, you know, see how long that satellite's been up there. So frequencies, that's pretty important, because not only you got to know where to point the antenna, you got to be on the right frequency or it don't work. And I've learned this the hard way 2 times. Oh, it's 435. I thought it was 436. Yeah, that'll kill you every time. So most satellites operate on 2 meters and 70 centimeters, typically 145.5 to 146 megahertz on 2 meters, and 435 to 438 megahertz on UHF. You're not allowed to put repeaters there. Some people do. We hear repeater outputs on the satellites. I mean, I know a guy in Albany that runs a repeater out on 145.7 something or other. You're not supposed to do that. They do have satellites up at 23 centimeters, which is 1296 megahertz and higher. You're playing professionally. The path loss and the cable loss is much higher in microwave. So you got to be really doing it right, or you're going to have trouble with it. Now, the older satellites were on 10 and 15 meters, the old RS satellites out of Russia. Those are great. They were loud as all can be, right? But the problem is, if 10 meters or 15 meters were open, you send the signal up, it doesn't go into space, it bounces off the ionosphere, it doesn't reach the satellite. So that was during the day, those satellites had limited use. They're gone. They've dropped out. So when we talk about uplink, uplink is the frequency you transmit on and the satellite receives. The downlink is the frequency you receive and the satellite transmits. And they got to be on different bands. They really don't have a room for a duplexer up on a satellite. You know, duplexer is like this big thing about the size of this podium, right? No room on a satellite for that. So they do it on different bands, small bandpass filter, whatever. So when we say that a satellite is VU, it means the uplink is on VHF, 2 meters, and the downlink is on UHF. If it's UV, it's uplink on UHF and the downlink on VHF. Well, my receiving apparatus is not as good on UHF as VHF. So the ones that downlink on you, I have sometimes have trouble receiving because I have a stock radio that doesn't really have a, super duper front end. So you keep that in mind too. So there are three basic types of satellites: linear transponder, an FM, and a digital. So linear transponder, it's linear. Basically, what goes up comes down. So you go up in sideband, you come down in sideband, you go up in CW, you come down in CW. You don't put FT8 on that. And I'll tell you why in a minute. An FM satellite is taking the repeater, they take it off the mountain and put it on a rocket and send it up and orbit it, right? It's a one-channel repeater. How many people can use it at the same time? One. And we'll get to that in a minute. And then they have digital satellites, which is basically an FM satellite, but it's looking for digital type communications, the buzzes and all that other stuff. So the linear transponder covers a range of frequencies. It's usually 20, 30, 40 kilohertz, something like that. And you can either use SSB or CW. And it's an inverting band plan. This is where a lot of people fall down. If you go up in frequency on your transmit, you got to tune down on your frequency on your receive. It also means that the receiver's on upper sideband, the transmit's on lower sideband. And you forget that all the time. It's like, why aren't they hearing me? You go, oh, I forgot to put the transmit in lower sideband. Yeah, you're listening to yourself and you sound all weird. That's what's going on. So many stations can use satellite. It's limited by the battery power of the satellites. A whole bunch of people can get on there. It's always fun during a field day because everyone's on there. Nobody knows what they're doing. The VFO is swishing all over the place. It's a free for all. That's how you get your experience. The FM satellite is a single channel up, single channel down. It usually requires a CTCS or PL tone, usually 67 hertz. You don't have that tone there, they ain't going to hear you. They call it the easy sats. Really? Not so easy. One guy goes in, one guy goes out. And it's basically who can overpower who. And I was operating as W1AW, and you figure they'll stand by. I'm the league, right? Nope. They stomped right all over me like I was nobody there. FM is also 10 to 15 dB weaker than single sideband, so the range is limited. Now, you have an advantage living in Vermont, if you live in Vermont. When the satellite's going north, when it gets up here, it's out of range of all those guys down in New York and New Jersey and Virginia and all that. We own the satellite at that point, and then we can hold the frequency. However, when it goes in the other direction, when it goes south, we get stomped all over. So that's the trick. If you're getting beat up or whatever, and it's an ascending path that's going north, you just wait a minute, and eventually you're going to be loud into it, and you can take over. So you always have to listen to yourself. You're transmitting on one radio, and you're listening on the other radio, and you actually hear yourself come back, and you'll hear people stomp right over you. Go back to somebody will talk right over you. There's no, no honor among thieves in that thing. So digital is also pretty much the same thing, single channel up, down. I don't know if they're as much of a free for all. I think it's a little bit more organized. So satellites run limited power as batteries are limited. They don't have a long enough extension cord. And the battery has to be charged by the sun. And if you're working the satellite at night, it ain't getting charged by the sun, right? You got to wait for it to kind of loop around and go to the other side of the earth. So yeah, no sun, no charge. So that the higher power satellites like RS-44 and ISS, they run 5 watts. ISS, it's a big space station. They have unlimited power there. They could run 100 watts if they wanted to, right? RS-44 is a pretty big satellite too, pretty big package, so they can run high power. Now you got the lower power satellites like SO50, the Saudi sat, 1/4 watt FM. I call it the buddy pole satellite. It is like the definition of PW, piss weak. Like, I hear something in there, I can make it when it's like at the highest elevation. I can make it. You need cascading preamps to hear it. It's just it's a reliable satellite. It's been up there for years and years. I can say that about it. So But yeah, it is hard to hear. Satellites will use simple whip antennas, low gain. You can't put a Yagi. The satellite tumbling and spinning, that ain't going to work. And as the satellite spins, the polarization spins. Because you think about it, it's like this box with a whip sticking out of it, and it's falling around. It's not anchored. And so when the thing turns, the antenna turns away from you. Or in the case of RS-44, the thing is so big that actually the antenna is shielded from the Earth when it turns a certain way. So satellite stations often use circular polarization with the crossed elements. So it's both vertical and horizontal. That cuts down on some of the fading. Although I've used linear Yagis and it works fine. Then we have Doppler shift. This is where it becomes fun. Doppler shift is a physical thing where there's a change in frequency due to a movement towards or away from something. If the source and the observer move closer, the frequency increases. If the source and the observer move apart, the frequency decreases. So, like when the train goes by and it blows its whistle, it goes meow, it makes that kind of sound, or a siren, whatever. Satellites do the same thing. Well, wait a minute. The satellite doesn't have a siren on it. No, the frequency that's transmitting on all changes. So if you're listening to a satellite on CW, it sounds something like this. And you're sitting there feverishly moving the VFO knob trying to keep up with it, right? That's how it works. And on UHF, it's even worse than VHF. On UHF, it's like 9 kilohertz from the start to the middle. That's pretty significant. So yeah, receive stations sound like they're drifting, and so you have to control your receive VFO and your transmit VFO and kind of get everything copacetic. So separate VFOs on the uplink and downlink are pretty essential. What's that? Not on UHF. No, it's moving. It's moving pretty well. Okay, antennas at your station. And a vertical antenna, it'll work, but not all that great. It's not going to work for the high passes, and it's not going to have the gain you need for the low passes. It'll kind of work for the so-so passes. Yagis are a better choice. A circular polarized Yagi will reduce fading due to spin, but you should have both azimuth and elevation control. I don't have elevation control. I'm not that into it, right? If you don't have no elevation control, you fix the Yagi at about 30 degrees or so. So if you're at 30 degrees, it'll kind of take care of the low passes and it'll take care of some of the higher passes. That's the one I set up in my driveway. This time of year, I don't do that. So I just have the fixed Yagi up on the tower. It's horizontal. And when it's a high pass, when it goes high, I don't hear it anymore. It goes bye-bye. You need two antennas. You need a VHF and a UHF antenna. You can get a dual band antenna with both VHF and UHF elements on it, but it's only going to work for low power, like 10 watts. If you're trying to run high power into something like that, like 100 watts, you're going to cross bleed between the frequencies. I found that when we do this at field day, we got to be about 10 feet apart between the antennas so that you don't hear yourself bleeding through. So that's what it looks like. The UHF Yagi is the one to the left. That's a circularly polarized. You see the cross elements. Okay, it's a short one, and then the one to the right, that is an 11 element 2 meter antenna. It's not vertical, horizontal. It's kind of like slanted to kind of mix between the two. And yes, I have it on a rotor. I'll show you the picture after this. That's not on a rotor, and the guy standing there with the broomstick. And I have this thing fixed at about 30 degrees, although the guy with the broomstick can move that up and down as we need be. So yeah, there we are. There's the guy with the broomstick. That's how we used to control it. We've gotten better over the years. And I show you this because you don't have to have fancy schmancy to do this. You can do this pretty Mickey Mouse if you so choose. Yes, I do. No, that way, that way. No, no, go over there. Yeah, I found it was just easy just having the rotor. Okay, a full duplex dual band transceiver is needed for the FM satellites. So you need to receive and transmit separately. I usually use my sideband radio for FM, and I tune it in on sideband because sideband is going to hear better than an FM. And then when I hear the carrier, I pop it on FM, and there it is. And then I just have a plain old 2-meter FM radio to either a vertical or Yagi. Or you have separate VHF, UHF transceivers needed. So you always need to be able to listen to yourself as you transmit. If you only do FM satellites, you're going to get bored quickly, though, because it's just working a bunch of people talking over each other. So for the linear satellites, you're going to need an all-mode transceiver, which can do full duplex. It can do VHF and UHF at the same time. Okay, that's tricky. Or you can find 2 separate VHF and UHF all-mode transceivers and set it up that way. That'll work too. So suitable radios for transponders, for transponder satellites, and this isn't an exhaustive list. You got the ICOM IC9700, drop about 1,900 for it. I think it may have gone up. I don't know with everything else. It's the gold standard. It's the best. It'll take you a long time to learn the menus, though. And I don't read instruction manuals. That's kind of like a sign of weakness. So figure it out. You got the Yaesu FD 817, 818, $650 used. It's discontinued, but it's low power. Sometimes you want to have that high power there. You got the IC 9100. That's about 8 years old. The Kenwood TR2000 is about 25 years old. And then you got the kind of stuff I use, the 736, which goes back 35 years. And it works well if you can find one. And the ones you're going to find on eBay are the ones from Japan that have different bands than the ones here. And then the Yaesu 726, which is 40 years old, but warning, it's deaf on UHF. You need something else to be able for it to hear stuff. And Yaesu is not, at least of that vintage, was not the most reliable radios. Yaesu I equate with Edsels or Ford Pintos or what. They break a lot. I spent a lot of time fixing them. I'm still trying to fix one. So, but they work. When they work, they work. So there's the 736. I got a 100-watt amp on the top. I usually run the amp up to about 75 watts. So when I'm going up on UHF, I like to have a little bit of power. There's the 2-meter FM on top for the FM satellites. You see the code key. I use the code key to find myself. You see the rotor there. We got the watt meter to make sure I know what kind of power running. This is at the field day tent, actually. That's what a 9700 used. It's like a quarter the size of the 736, but 5 times the price. So always review the available satellite status. They're always shooting up new ones, and the ones that are up there are always falling down. There was a whole bunch of Chinese satellites, and they were great. They were loud. They worked really well for about a year or so. And then they crapped out and fell out of the sky. Chinese engineer. I don't know. I don't keep track of this. There was an Indian one, VO52, which was very good too. And it seemed like it died an early death. On the other hand, they got Oscar 7, which I've made contacts on. And that thing went up in 1967. That is 50 years? Yeah, something like that. 60 years. How many electronic things you own that are 60 years and still work? Now, the batteries are long gone. It's in the sun, it works. If it's not in the sun, it don't work. And it drifts like hell, and it makes an FM weird noise, whatever, but you can still make contacts through it. So new satellites come on, old satellites go away. So you go to amsac.org and you look on the list, and they actually have a place where people can upload the satellite was on the air this day, but it was off the air that day. You can look and see who's reporting what, see what's available. Some satellites they turn on and off willy-nilly. And the week before field day, when I'm testing, I need to hear that satellite there. I don't want to get in a field day and then find the things off, right? I need it to work because I don't have a lot of time to play with it. I'm trying to do 16 other things at the same time. I have a cheat sheet with all the satellite frequencies. Do I have that? Yeah, there it is. There's my cheat sheet, right? So this just breaks down what's available. So for the linears, you have RS-44. It's a VU, means V up, U down. The height's around 830 miles. It's originally from Russia. They still allow us to use it, fortunately. I guess they haven't gotten mad at us. The JO-97 is a UV. So it's loud because you're hearing it on VHF. It's lower, though. That came from Jordan. AO-73 is a U.S. satellite. That's a little weird. They kind of shut it on and off depending on when they feel like it. And then a new one this summer was MO-124, which is also a VU. For the F1 ones, you got the ISS, which is, that's the easiest one to work. They allowed when they come up over the horizon there, they're actually moving the S meter. And then on the other hand, you got SO50, which is about as weak as we. If you can hear that, you have a good station. 91 is a daytime only. The batteries are kind of shot on that. And then SO-124, and there's also a 125. Those are fairly new. So there are some pictures. So that picture of RS-44, that whip is like 10 feet long. To give you an idea, that thing is big. The SO-50 is like about this. It's tiny. Then 97, 73, then the ISS, of course, people live on that thing. Okay, this is my cheat sheet. So I keep this, taped to the radio. That tells me what frequencies it got to be on. So if I look on the RS-44, I look at the center. So I got to be listening on 435.64. I got to be transmitting on 145.965. And so when I start to pass, I start on those two frequencies. Not going to be there. Remember, you got Doppler moving everything around, right? But it'll be close. And there are all the various satellites, the different frequencies. So the steps. Well, check the past predictions. That's the first thing you got to do. And it's kind of a pain because a lot of satellite passes happen in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I'm a nighttime person, but a lot of satellites are dead at night, so that could be a problem. Preset the Yagis to the starting azimuth before the pass. Otherwise, you're scrambling around to get ready, right? Get everything set. Preset the uplink and downlink to the middle of the transponder. Get the frequencies there and set the mode to CW. So a few minutes after the AOS, when the satellite first comes over the horizon, this is what I do. Some people may poo-poo. I actually move the transmitter to find the receive signal very slowly. And you got to use headphones on this. Some people say, don't do that. You're swishing across the bandpass. But if you swish the receive side, you're going to hear other stations. It's going to be hard to pick it out. Don't do it for too long, though. Just kind of don't make a habit of it. When you have a weak signal, stay on CW. That's the best chance of being heard. Unfortunately, most of the satellite users don't know much CW, though. That can be a problem. When the signals increase, switch to single sideband. Now, again, remember, the receive is upper sideband. You got to put the transmit in lower sideband. It ain't going to work. Okay, you always got to keep reminding yourself that. And then they recommend they adjust the higher band to keep on frequency. So if someone's calling me, of course, I want to adjust the receive side, get them tuned in. And then when I get them tuned in, then as I'm talking, I'm tuning the transmit side to keep them, so that I'm on my same frequency. It's there's a knack to it. It takes a lot of practice. So you're on the pass clock. Stay brief and on point because 14, 15 minutes, you're all done. And there ain't nothing you're going to do to change that. And remember to continually move the Yagi. Why is it getting weak? You got to move the Yagi. You do all that stuff. Now, and then there's some people, there was these two guys, I was on the different satellites all day long, and these same guys were on all these passes with the same stupid, boring conversation. It's like, go on Echolink or something. Go on 20. Don't tie up the satellite with you put all this money and effort into satellite to have a QSO. I don't know. I mean, I kind of found it funny. Now, a high performance satellite station, which I don't have. You mount the antenna high up away from trees and structures. I live in a pine forest. Pine forest and UHF don't mix. The pine trees eat up UHF and they don't go away in the winter. That's a problem. And then when I put the antenna in my driveway, when I look to the southwest, I'm looking right into my house. When I look to the northeast, I'm looking right into my neighbor's house. So it's not really a good place. It works a lot better at field day where it's an open field. So you want to have both azimuth and elevation rotors. I don't have an elevation rotor. You want to have the high power to use when necessary. And then what they do is they have computer control to turn the rotors. So the computer knows what direction it is, and it automatically moves the rotor, moves the elevation rotor, moves the azimuth rotor, whatever. And then the computer also adjusts for the Doppler shift. Okay, what do you need to be there for? I mean, really, the computer's doing all the work. You just say, hi, here I am, whatever. Now, again, you FT8 guys, you can't do FT8 on here. Why? Because it's drifting like a son of a gun. That ain't going to work. You got to lock the frequency and it's going to drift right out of the bandpass. So yeah, I have like having fun with it, whatever it's too, of course, this is against what I just said with the Parks activation, where I do this like a professional with high power and everything else. And I poo-poo the guys doing the Mickey Mouse thing. Here I am doing the Mickey Mouse thing. So, know both sides of the equation and pick what you like to do. So, final thoughts. It's not just about the QSO. This is about actually learning experiment. You're learning new stuff here now. You got to know some stuff to be able to do this. Don't just live on the FM satellites. That kind of gets boring after a while. And try a whole bunch of different satellites. So before field day, I try them all, and I make up a whole list of all the passes for field day, and I find the best ones. If the best one doesn't work, I find the next best one, and I also have to make that work with the schedule when I'm on sideband, right? Learn how space communication works. It's pretty darn exciting. I mean, when you tune on the radio, listen to shows or watch TV, all that's coming through the satellite pretty much. So pretty important stuff. Find ways to always improve your station and teach others to get on the satellites. That's what I'm doing here. It gets lonely. I get on there, I'll see the same three people, satellite to satellite. So we got plenty of time for questions.
Aggies and put them up on an ASL rotor on the roof of the house. And there's also it's called the SAT. It's a controller that controls everything. That makes it very easy. It keeps track of all the Keplerians. It controls the radio. So it takes care of Doppler real time as you're doing it. It tracks the satellites. It'll tell you what's coming up next, when, gives you a little warning, 2-minute warning that it's coming up. Controls the antennas as it's going by, and that helps quite a bit. So we've been real happy with that. And,
so what do you do while all this is going on?
Well, we just try to figure out which ones we want to work and try to get them. Haven't done it the old school way, except way back. I made several contacts back in the RS-12 days.
Oh yeah,
with an indoor dipole where I couldn't hear myself, so I had to hope I could find somebody, and made quite a few contacts with that. So
nice. But you're in New Hampshire, right?
We're in New Hampshire. Okay. Yeah. Unity Mountain.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Any other questions? So anyone going to get on the satellites now after listening to this talk? Or is anyone on the satellites going to get off the satellites after listening to this talk? Yep. Pass the microphone.
Yeah, I noticed on your station you're using Yaesu 736. I have come into possession of one of those, and I have it working. I had to do a lot of repairs on it, but I'm a little stumped as to if how to use the COM port on it. Have you used the COM port to enable it to control the thing with a computer? It has.
I'm trying to do basic things like make it transmit.
Okay, all right. I understand that. I went through all that fun, but I've got it where it works. But there's not much mentioned in the manual.
That was the early days of COM ports.
Yeah, I don't know if it needs a level converter. I was just curious if you had successfully tied it to a computer.
No, I haven't.
Okay, that was my only question. So
okay, there.
Ryan, November 1, Oscar Charlie India. So I can speak to that. I have a 736R and I have a 9700. And there's a problem with the CAT control in the 736R in that it can't read the VFO. It can write the VFO, but it can't read the VFO, which means doing the Doppler correction on the 736 is really tough. No. But I mean, the CAT control works. I use a very inexpensive USB to CAT controller. I use SAT-PC32, but there's some real limitations to the implementation. Images point, it's a very early implementation of CAT, and it has limitations like it can't read. I said it can't read the VFO. You can write it, but it can't read it.
Anybody else? Yeah, I was 2 years ago in field day. I was right in the middle of a contact on RS-44. I had the guy and whatever, and the power crapped out, 0 watts. Oh, damn, I blew up the amplifier. And so fortunately, I flipped it around for the next pass was a UV. It was a VU rather. So the VHF side worked. So I worked that pass. I got the thing home. Nothing wrong with the amplifier. The radio itself stopped putting out power. There's a switching diode, you know, the pin diode, the switch. It blew up. It it literally cracked. And the Yaesu 736s in the power amplifier, they are like unworkable. They are like extremely hard to work on. It's like taking the plugs out of a 283 Chevy. If you've ever worked on old Chevys, you know what I mean there. It just, and then I got that working and it broke 6 other things. It sits on the bench. And somebody else had one. He actually drilled holes in a piece of sheet metal to get in something. It's a horror show. And Yaesu won't help you. They have a whole bunch of new guys in there. They never heard of it. Okay, anybody else have any questions, comments, or whatever? Well, I hope you enjoyed the talk, and maybe we'll see some more of you on the air. It's certainly satellites is a fun thing. I said I got on as W1AW, worked 16 people and a few passes there. So there's certainly people out there to work, particularly if you're a rare station. So thanks for coming, and we will see you at 12 o'clock when we close this thing out.